So as we all know, right, pagination means, you are getting data in chunks, basically, right? A server is not sending details, all the details together to the client, right? So that is important, because when you have a lot of data, right, so if you are getting all the data in one shot, it will degrade the performance of your application, right? So if you open any real-time application, right, then also you see, like when you scroll it, it will give more data. That means the API calls, will happen in chunk, basically, right? So you send a next request for a next set of data. If suppose first page is not enough for the user, right, so user can click on the next page, like that. Whenever user, it is like a on demand, you are fetching the data from the server. Okay, so this is useful for the client, to render whatever information is actually needed or necessary to the consumers, basically. Okay, so there are basically three types of pagination generally you'll observe in any API. We'll go through all the three. The first one is offset pagination. So let's take an example here, right? So suppose you have an API, get API, which will return items list, right? So you can actually limit the number of items returned by using two components. One is limit and one is offset. So what those two components are all about is offset is if we are setting from 0, then it is the first item in the collection to return. And limit is like how many items. So in this scenario, you can consider is like, I want first record, offset should start from the first record, and I want 20 records basically for my first page. Okay, so I want to limit that to 20 records, and then for the next page I will update the offset to maybe 20, and then it will fetch me next 20 records basically. Okay, so these are the simple queries you can relate to the API. So obviously API has to have some queries to support that functionality in the backend, right? So this is a simple query for it. For example, the first query, right, you can see I'm selecting first name, last name, and score from players table, where some specific ID, game ID is 42, for example, and I have to always order by means sort the records, right? Because if you are not sorting it, so you will always get if offset is 0, you will get from first record only, right? So in a typical database, records will be getting added to the start of your data table, right? So that's the way we need to order it, and then we'll be limiting to 10 records basically. Okay, so this is again a offset pagination, a simple implementation, like you give the limit, give the offset, and get the data. But there is a problem here. Offset is basically where to start. Okay, so suppose you assume that you have a database table, it has 100 records. Okay, now you want to fetch only the first 10 records. Okay, so you have to set the offset as 0 and limit as 10. So you will get the first 10 record. Next time, suppose you want to see now next 10 records. Obviously, you have to update your offset now. Limit will be same because you want only 10 records. You can change your limit based on your implementation. But suppose you want to see 10 record at batch of 10 record, then you increment the offset to from where to fetch the data. So here this is the case, but there is a problem here. Okay, if you see, you have a lot of records. Okay, so your record count is very high. Now suppose you want to pull the data from offset 1 lakh or 2 lakhs, something like that, right? So what happened, if you see the right side query, right, so offset count is now I have given like very high value. So what will happen when you execute the query? It will discard the records up to that offset. So that means it will give more load to the server. You have to query, you have to fetch, and you have to discard, right? So this is a limitation for offset based pagination basically. Okay, so there are other implementations. Next implementation is Keyset pagination. So how actually this is different from offset base, right? So in this case, we will not pass offset. Okay, we will pass only limit, and we will pass some key parameters here, like a filter, right? So like, any fields in your database. So it will be like a filter. You can consider it is like a limit with a filter. Okay, so in this case, from post where user ID is something and post ID is something, now greater than maybe 100 or like that, you can specify. Then order by, again, you want to sort it based on the post ID, then limit is 10. So here basically you are not passing the offset, so you don't need to discard any record. So based on the filter criteria, you will get the number of records with a specific limit. But here the problem is you are introducing new parameters, right? So you are introducing this filter parameters, so additional parameters basically, right? So that again, additional parameters will depend on your functionality. Like, different APIs may have different filters, right? So client side, you have to keep track of those filters basically. So again, this is better than the offset, but again, it has some limitations. So to overcome that, there is an enhanced version of Keyset pagination, which is called SIG pagination. So here, limit parameter will be there always, but we will pass something called, your starting and ending, SIG location. For example, you want to, get the records after ID 20, right? So that kind of parameter, or before ID 100. So like that kind of parameters you can pass instead of passing like, regular filter columns, right? You can pass something like this, after or before kind of stuff. You can see the query to relate it, like, select star from items where ID is greater than 20. Okay, limit 20. So it will start the records where the ID is starting from 21 to 30. Basically, it will return. Then again, you want to change it, and you want to get the records after 30, after 40, right? So, or before, right? So you can just pass two parameters, after and before, and you can SIG the position basically. Okay, this is another implementation. Suppose you have this person's data, no, you want to represent it here. Now you can give here, like, what is your page size basically, like, you want to display 5 records, 10 records, and 20 records basically, right? So that you can specify here. This is the limit part. Then you have your, see, what is the page size and what is the page number. Basically, page number 2, if I want to go to page number 6, for example, I can directly go to page number 6 here. This is a typical pagination, how we can represent in a UI. So you will have your limits, and then you will have the pages basically. I'll show you also one example. Like, in this example, actually data is not directly coming, it is handled in the UI. Like, they are not exposing the person's API. Basically, they are actually exposing the pages. Okay, so in real time when you implement, right, so you may see something like this. For example, this is again a dummy API. So users and then page equal to 1. So if page equal to 1 and it is mentioning like total I have 12 records and I have 2 pages basically. So per page is 6, right? So per page 6 means each page the limit is 6 records. So you can see I'm in page 1. So I have 6 records. 6 JSONs you can see inside this, right? So you are getting 6 records. Now I want to go to page 2. The remaining ID start from 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. And total the metadata information is here. Like first information you can see here, that is the metadata information, because you need client should know, right, from where to fetch how many records are there, so that it can actually represent this data in the UI basically, right? So it has to calculate. So for that paging APIs, you will see something like this, like the number of records, your per page, your limits, offsets, all those things in the part of metadata of the API. If your API has pagination basically. Okay, so in real time, whenever you are getting this kind of APIs, so there will be 2 components. One is the metadata and one is the actual raw data. Basically, raw data is nothing but the number of records. And from the metadata, you can calculate, how actually this data will be represented in the UI for the client basically. Mainly, you have to verify the pagination logic also here. Like how many pages are there, all suppose here, like per page is 6, so you have to also verify in this in this response you are getting 6 records basically, and then total is 12, right? So that means you should have 2 pages. So what will happen if I give page number 3? So there is no records here, only the metadata has come, because we have only 12 records, right? So it is coming in 2 pages. So this is also will be a test for you. Like, if you're going any page beyond that, you should not see the records. Only thing is like you should not see the records. So if you go to page number 1, you can see this particular array, right? Array of JSON. So that should be your validation up to here before the support. That this array is not there, because you don't have any record basically. And then in the this kind of implementation, right? So what you need to do basically, suppose you are in the last page, right? Now next API no in 21, what will happen? It is blank. It is not giving any data. Now as per the business, right, you may have some business logic also defined here, like user should not be you will not allow user to go beyond the pages basically. Like you have only data up to 20 page, so user tries to link, that link should be disabled. Now that link is enabled, right? But there is no data. So this is a use case for your UI verification also, and even API verification also. From UI, you should this particular distinct link should be disabled, or it should come back to the first page basically. See here, the last one is there, which is coming back to the first page. So as per your business requirement, you should do the validation. And then you should also verify, based on your limit, how many records are coming. If you change it to 5 to 10, right, in your API, so you should get 10 records basically. Like this. So these are the tests generally we perform for pagination. Mostly you may not get defects as such, while testing the pagination, because all those things are like built-in functionality in APIs. But yeah, just the quick validation test you can always add.